And almost after every, mountaintop moment, literal and figurative, the next day he would need to just go off and say, okay, I need to rest from that. I need to recharge. I need to regroup. Where the disciples, his followers, were wanting to pick right up on yesterday's success and up to the right. Hey, man, let's do it.
The momentum is going.
Exactly.
Let's keep going, right?
Well, what about tonight?
Don't stop.
What are we doing now? Okay, here, let's keep this thing going. We're getting some traction.
That seems natural to think that way.
Right? Of course. And they were thinking differently than he was thinking.
Right.
That's a taste of Up and to the Right. This week's episode of The Wise Guys, a podcast that unleashes the unthinkable in culture, religion, business, and everyday life. This week, we have a special treat for you where we share one of our Season 1 episodes from our vault. So it's time to step over the line, strap in, and let's see if you are willing to let Mac and Stu take you to a place of thinking differently.
Okay, Mac and Stu here, and you're listening to the Wise Guys Podcast, where we go rogue as we apply wisdom to the everyday to help us do it just a little bit better. In this episode, we're going to talk about the illusion of perpetual growth. It's the up and to the right sort of thing, if you think about a graph, that we just, we get in our head that it always needs to work that way in lots of different areas, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But, what is that imbalance? And that's really what it is when we have a perspective like that. What does it do to us? Because it can't always be about more. It's just not always more. Now, this one might be a bit convicting. I know it was when I was kind of putting this together, Stu, but, but hey, gang, we think it's for our own good, for sure. So doing a little bit better doesn't always mean having just a little bit more. So, I don't know, man. Here we go, Stu. What are you thinking there, brother? Hey, man.
Wow. Hey, Mac. Good to see you. So I got to tell the Rogers what it's like being your friend. So tonight I had come completely planning for a different topic, and then you sprung this on me. So we're gonna see what's up there. See how much wisdom I've gained.
How much is up in the field
over the years on this topic. I love it, though.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun. I mean, this is what keeping yourself on your toes, I think, is an important thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Keeps life interesting and fun.
This isn't going to be the first time either, right? Huh?
Yeah. So namaste, everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, you all are beautiful, exotic cocktails, and we love your uniqueness. So please share it with people around you in your life.
Yes.
As always, we love hearing from you. So we have, if we have Facebook account, Instagram, you can email us. Please share any stories you'd like to tell us or comments. We love hearing from you. Yeah. And we will talk about your stories and comments on an episode if you leave us some.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love it. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's just for us to do this thing together. It's about the we, not the me, right? We talk about that all the time.
It sure is. So explain to me what this illusion of perpetual growth is. I get what perpetual means. So we're talking unending is kind of another way I see it. Like it's just forever growing, like the line forever goes up to the right when you think about that. But you put the word illusion in there, so that makes me think
there's the roguish.
There's something going on. Yeah. Right. So let's hear it.
There's the rogue take. So here's kind of where this came from this week. One of and we've mentioned this before. I think maybe even just in the last episode, but one of our favorite folks that we plug into and have for many, many, many years is Rob Bell. He's one of our favorite guys.
Yeah, I love him. Hey, Rob, in case you're listening. I don't think he is, but that would be awesome if he was.
Probably not. Yeah, okay. So I was listening to a podcast. He's got a podcast, which I highly recommend, by the way, if any of you would be interested, robbell.com. And he calls it the Robcast. Anyway, he was talking about this idea in he wasn't the focus of the podcast, but he had this idea about up and to the right, up and to the right. And you think, and where that comes from, of course, is a graph. If you think about a graph and a line on a graph, up and to the right, is growth, and we have this in our life in many, many different aspects. But what Rob was saying was that, and he was using it And I just give you a little background of where he was coming from, because I think this is a really poignant, example and a story. He was talking more about a Bible story, and he was talking about Jesus, and he was talking about how Jesus had started his ministry, and he was gathering a crowd, and he was, doing these, miracles, if you will, and he was speaking, and he was healing, and he was doing all this kind of stuff. And almost after every, mountaintop moment, literal and figurative, the next day he would need to just go off and say, okay, I need to rest from that. I need to recharge. I need to regroup. Where the disciples, his followers, were wanting to pick right up on yesterday's success and up to the right. Hey, man, let's do it.
The momentum is going. Exactly. Let's keep going, right?
What about tonight?
Don't stop.
What are we doing now? Okay, here, let's keep this thing going. We're getting some traction.
That seems natural to think that way, right?
Of course. And they were thinking differently than he was thinking, though,
right.
See? And so he realized that the reason he could be so effective last night or yesterday at whatever he had just done was because he wasn't doing it day after day after day after day. It wasn't a perpetual up and to the right, right? Mm-hmm. That he needed that, that pause, that time that just wasn't in the growth mode. And so that's the background sort of. It just affected me in enough ways to say, well, how can we take that concept, that idea that to think that just the way life works is constantly, perpetually up and to the right, because it's what we've been taught. It's what we, whether it was right from school or in your business or in your money or even relationships, we're going to talk about that. We just think growth is always good. And the point we're making in this episode is be careful, because that can be an illusion. We can be duped in there. We can be deceived when that is our pursuit, when we think that's the mission.
Yeah. I really feel like this is so common in our world and our society that we don't even think about this normally. You know what I mean? Like we just assume this is the way we need to live our life.
Right. That's right? The way it works. And that's the way success is measured. Mm-hmm. See?
Yeah.
I had this then, now I have more now. That's success. Again, whatever we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so what we don't want to try to imply is that growth is bad or negative. No, because everything grows. Growth is good. We're not saying it's bad.
Yes.
At the same time, we have to couch our expectations of that growth with wisdom. Because that's what this podcast is all about, right?
Yeah.
Is gridding whatever we're talking about through a wise lens. So it's the struggle between more and enough. Do we ever use that word? This is enough?
Yeah, I think in college when you're out drinking, you always want more, but it's like, look, that's enough.
Yeah, and maybe it's just because you passed out, okay?
Oh, boy. Yeah.
But we don't tend to use that word enough, pun intended, right?
Right.
We don't say that to ourselves often enough, that, no, I'm good. I'm good for now. It doesn't mean necessarily for the rest of your life or for the rest of whatever, for the long haul. That's not the point. But we need these times where we say, for now. Whatever that now means. It might be a microsecond. It might be a little meditative 10 minutes. It might be a day that you need to step back. It might be a vacation time. It might be a season of life.
I know we're going to get into some examples and some specifics, but it seems like it depends on what it is, on what you do afterwards, right? Like, let me give an example. Okay, I'm a wrestling coach. Everybody knows this. And the pinnacle event is the state tournament, right? So if my wrestlers and my team, we win state, that is up and to the right tremendously, right?
Sure.
So what do we do after that? Right? Do we continue to practice and push and, we got to get ready for next season? Do we take a break?
Yeah.
And what that break for us looks like, no practice, eat what you want to eat at this moment, and don't worry about all the things that you had to do to get to that point to peak so you can win the state tournament. So my point is that that's something that's a success up and to the right. So what you do after that depends on what the actual activity was or what the event was. You could talk about speaking. I had like a big speaking engagement, right? And it's over. Now what?
Right. Right. Well, yeah, no, I think you're exactly right that it does need to have context as well. Because again, growth isn't bad. It's just if it's the ultimate, always the pursuit, then that's an unrealistic and unsustainable expectation. And then there's all kinds of ramifications there as to how we dealing with the falling short, all those kinds of things that come into it. And we see this all over our life. I mean, in all different aspects of it. And again, underlying, I think this message of the perpetual illusion of up and to the right is this word called contentment. That we have to say, when we adopt an attitude of always up and to the right, are we ever content then? Can we ever say, that's good, I'm good? That's enough for now. That's enough. It's fine. And I don't care whether we're, let's use a business example. We're both businessmen. We've got our own businesses and have had them for years. And it doesn't matter whether you have your own business or you work for a company. I mean, what is business about? It's about growth. It's always about growth.
Yeah.
And so when you have this overlying idea and attitude that next quarter's numbers have got to be bigger than this quarter's numbers-ish, fill in the blank however your business operates, how sustainable is that over the long haul? We set ourselves up for these expectations that are just totally unrealistic, and we're not okay. And when we understand, there's a term in investing that it's called the pause that refreshes. And so like a stock or a company or even in your life, sure, you can have growth, and growth is good, an upward trajectory and up to the right. But eventually, what's going to get you further in the long run is we need to pull back a little bit. We need a little bit of exhale, and maybe it's flat or maybe it's actually coming back down. Doesn't matter. The point being is that we're not on the constant up and to the right. We need that time that pauses and refreshes. And sometimes less is more.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about my business and this happening, the ups and downs, there's a lot of good things that happened on the downsides.
Right.
The pause you're talking about.
Yeah.
And we got to do some things that helped the company that we didn't have time to do before because we were running full out sprint.
Up and to the right.
Right, up and to the right.
That's right. That's exactly.
So
yes.
It almost seems like there's some wisdom in planning for these so that you can take advantage of it instead of being caught off guard and like, okay, now what are we going to do? We don't have the right kind of sales coming in or whatever it is.
Correct.
We have time. What do we do? Like instead of being stuck in that and being caught off guard, okay, but we've planned for this.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Now
that's a beautiful, that's a great point. And in our life, how resilient are we to the things that we don't necessarily even plan for, but we know are coming at some point, And so again, how much do you build in the ability to accept the not up and to the right? Because again, it's not going to always happen. It just can't, right? So how much have we conditioned ourselves to be resilient, to be flexible, to handle, to take advantage, like you were talking, Stu, to take advantage of those times. Right.
And then not see it as a negative, right?
Correct.
Look at it in have a different perspective on it.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And again, it could be your business. It could be your job. If you're in sales or whatever it might be, it can be, here's something that came up when it comes to the business. So I put a little equation down here. That's economics 101. It's business 101. What does sales equal? They equal how many units of whatever it is you're selling you sold at whatever price it is you sold them. Right, that's your sales. Right,
right.
It's a pretty simple equation, right?
Yep.
So here's the scoop on that. the two components, the two variables, how many do I sell and how much am I selling it for? What happens when either one of those or both change? And sometimes they change and they're not, it's totally out of your control. Let me give you an example. I started doing some work at Home Depot, my story there with that. And so lumber, if anybody's been plugged into the cost of building materials over the course of the last year, especially since the pandemic, I mean, they've gone into the stratosphere. It's insane. All right. And so, especially with a company like Home Depot or anybody that's tied to the building industry or lumber companies, whatever it might be, they saw their sales just go crazy because the prices just went nuts. Right. So they didn't have to sell anything more. No more units. They didn't have to sell any more lumber or pieces of 2x4 or whatever it might be. They could just keep doing the same old thing there, but they made more money up and to the right. Right? Now what's happened? Well, there's we see these numbers and they come across and all that kind of stuff. And people talk about the sales numbers and all that kind of deal. Well, guess what? This quarter or this month or whatever, they're going to be lower. Because what happened? The price of lumber went down. I mean, and so now how do you adjust? How do you take into account? How do you manage through all of that and not have the constant, well, this number's lower than it was before. It's just, we just get into this mindset that somehow or other now there's something wrong. And something needs to be fixed. And so now you go into the labor and you see do we need to cut back? Do we need to do this? Do we need to pile more stuff on other people and make the labor? I mean,
how do we keep that line going up to the right is the goal.
That's the point.
In that thinking, that's the goal.
That's the point. Right. And so many businesses are geared that way, and so.
Well, you can bring this into each person's life too, personal, right? Absolutely. I mean, you start talking about your bank account. I mean, everybody wants their bank account to go up to the right.
Right. Exactly.
Right. I mean, that's the goal. And so, but if that's constant, I mean, I know some pretty successful people that is their goal. And you know what, Mac, the more up and to the right they go, the more they work. The less time they have for other things, family, or for themselves. Right. I mean, it's just like, if I can keep working, I can make more money. This is the thinking, right? Because I'm going up and to the right instead of maybe thinking, maybe I'll have more of a balanced life. Maybe let me be content with a certain level that I'm at.
Correct. There's a word, contentment. You just used it. That's exactly right. It's not always about more. Because what follows on the heels of all of that, of course, is my stuff then. If I'm making more money, why am I making more money? So that I can have more stuff. Now, again, you hear this, and we're not telling you anything new here right now, gang. We get that. But what we're trying to tie it together in is the expectation that that's the way it's supposed to work. And when it doesn't work that way, now what? Now are we depressed? Now are we going to try that much harder? Do we abuse and use others in our life to a greater degree and ourselves? You were just talking about, your health and all that kind of stuff it's all bundled together. You can't separate it out. When you have this expectation of, then the cause and effect is just going to fall into place. And like you were talking, Stu, which I thought was a great point, you can't handle when it doesn't work that way. You have a plan for any of it. You haven't built in any of it. And now you're in crisis mode.
Right. Not a fun place to be.
No. You crash and you burn. And where does it all end? Where does this obligation that you create for yourself more than anything? Now, again, lifestyle and companies, where you work can certainly contribute to all of this. But where does the obligation that you've set sort of for yourself to do more, where does that end? How does that finally, okay, well, enough's enough. I'm good now. I mean, typically it's really hard to get off that merry-go-round,
Yeah. And again, our world, our society doesn't think in this way.
Correct.
Because look at the people that just have so much, and you're thinking, why are you continuing to work so hard? Like, but they, and hey, more power to them. That's what they want to do. We're just looking, what Mac and I are talking about is we want people to really enjoy life and to do life maybe a little bit better, than where you're currently at, whatever level you're at.
Right.
Right. So that's what we're talking about here. I mean, success is a good thing. Growth is a good thing.
Yes.
We're not saying that these things are not good. I mean, obviously you want businesses to grow, you want your bank account to grow. And hey, if you can, afford a few possessions here and there, that is fine.
Sure.
But where's that pause that you mentioned?
Yes.
To refresh your spirit, to refresh your soul so you can truly enjoy life and enjoy these things.
Like what you hear so far? Join us in the Rogue Nation by going to our website, www.gorogue.life, where you will find links to our social media and podcast channels, posts on the Seeing Differently blog, and a way to subscribe to all our happenings. We encourage you to become a member of our cafe, where you can interact with us and fellow Roguers and keep the conversation going. Please share us and like us. And now, let's get back to our Wise Guys.
All of this.
Well, and then you bring in the really important word, as always, that we talk about a lot. And whether it's the stuff, and we talk about the tangibles, we've just been talking about mostly tangibles, whether it's business or bank account or possessions and those kinds of things, which all are part of this equation. But then whole nother aspect of all this are the things that are sort of the intangibles, or the more gray, the more floaty, the more mysterious, the more, the stuff that you just can't necessarily put a finger on. And those are important too. And when we don't, here's the thing, we were talking about this before we started, recording. We don't even realize, we were talking about the social media. Oh, which, by the way, I didn't say in the beginning, but I'm going to go ahead and pull a plug in right now while I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, okay? Let's do it.
That we talked about it last episode, and we've put together the agenda. So get ready next week, Roguers.
Yeah, we're going to talk about social media. I don't know what Mac will end up calling it, but I'm calling it the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media. It's going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, so get ready.
Definitely tune in for that one.
Okay, yeah. I'm putting in a little infomercial in for that here right now. Okay. But so anyway, back, sorry, chase the squirrel there, right? But
we're back.
Yeah, I'm back. All right. So it's this idea that we kid ourselves, that we don't even realize subliminally and subconsciously how this attitude affects everything. You can put a tangible finger on my bank account number is this, and it was that, or it's going to be that. There's a number, but it's a lot more subtle, and I think in many cases way more damaging in the long run is when we let all this kind of take possession of us and we get lulled into it all, and we can't even call it for what it is anymore. We can't even recognize it. We can't even, we're on the merry-go-round, and we don't even know it's a merry-go-round anymore. We just don't even, it's just not even on our radar of how we've been just sort of sucked in and deceived into a new normality that is so damaging in so many ways, and it's so fragile. That's the other thing. Right. Think about how fragile one little bump in the night, one little thing goes amiss. The trajectory doesn't quite go up and to the right. It doesn't even have to crash, just it doesn't quite fit. How do you deal with that? And not just you, but then it's everybody that's in your sphere.
Yeah, we all affect one another. So this is affecting people around you, especially your family and close friends, but people, others around you too. It's it's affecting as well.
Well, if you're in any any place of authority or management, if you have people working under you and for you, and you're affecting again, your countenance, you've probably been, if that's your role, I'm sure we're not doing a business class here, right? You get all that. You're not, clueless to the idea that however you are doing, how you're doing is going to affect how you manage other people. But the point is, that's a truism. You can acknowledge it. But we're going to back up a little bit here and we're going to say, but just realize the subtle stuff that you may not have ever put a finger on. You may never ever have said to yourself, gosh, this up and to the right sort of mentality. Yeah, the company that I work at, that's kind of the way we think. My life, that's kind of the way we think. Look how, I'm a little more objective about my own life as I run it through that grid. I'm guessing, because it's happened for me, for sure, that you're going to start to go, wait a minute here. It's not that my life's a total tragedy, but it's just, maybe to some extent I have been deceiving myself into pursuing something that I thought was the thing to pursue.
Right.
And yet, what are the ramifications of it really?
So let me ask you, Mac. Is there good growth?
Well, no.
We said right up front, growth. It's not negative, I think is what you said, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So is there good growth? And what is that, if there is?
Yeah. And I think that's a great question because obviously you have to answer. Of course, there's good growth, At the same time, let's make sure, and we're going to talk about a few of these things. Let's talk about how we can perceive growth as good, and maybe though it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the real nuance here. There's the gray area. There's the little roguish, where you can, on the surface, go, well, of course that kind of growth is good.
Mm-hmm.
Next, let's move on. When you go, whoa, wait a minute here now. Okay. Yes, that can be good, but it can also not be good if depending on the circumstance. And you were talking about that, early on in this episode. So let me answer your question, Stu. Yes, there can be good growth, but be careful. So let's look at a wade into that a little bit. So let's just some of the things that we might think are good growth, right?
Yeah.
So, so knowledge. Don't we all want to kind of grow in knowledge?
Absolutely.
Knowledge is good. We go
to school or advanced schooling or
absolutely
right?
Get good jobs. We we learn more stuff,
certifications at your job or
all of it. So we're going to say is growing in knowledge good?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now where's the comma? Where's the comma in that? Right.
Well, if you have 5 PhDs,
yeah.
First of all, I'm very impressed if you do. Secondly, it's like, okay, are you going to feel content at all ever?
Well, there you go. That's a great way to connect the dots. I think that a constant pursuit of knowledge does that in some ways undermine your ability to be content.
Yeah.
Just think about that for a second. Just ponder the possibility. That's what we're asking here in this. That's what we're stimulating you to. Great point. And knowledge, here's another thing about knowledge. More knowledge for knowledge's sake isn't necessarily good.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to take the next step and say, what do you do with that knowledge?
It could be a distraction, right?
Yes.
If you almost did, like my example, right? 5 PhDs. Are you able to enjoy those or use those in any way? Or are you just going to the next one? I guess is the point.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
And this, what does that look like? So to your point, there's good growth. That's good, right? To gain that.
Sure. But just don't get deceived into thinking that just
that you have to continue, right?
Yes. First of all, it doesn't allow you don't allow yourself the time to process properly, maybe, right? To integrate the new knowledge with wisdom into your life.
Key word.
I mean, you just this constant flow up and to the right, up and to the right, up and to the right, without a pause to refresh, as we've used the term, or without just a leveling off, without an exhale. Again, where does that leave us? Where does that leave you? It sort of leaves us in an adventure and missing the point, which we talk about a lot.
Right.
And kind of what goes along with knowledge, as we've described it here, can be understanding as well, that we grow in understanding of the way life works, of the way things work. That's a good growth, to grow in our understanding of things so that we can properly grid, life, our worldview, all that kind of thing. So again, you asked the question, is growth good? Yes. Is growth and understanding good?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. It certainly is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Comma. Right.
Don't be consumed. Maybe.
There.
Maybe that's another way to look at it.
Okay. Yes. And I think too, of course, you get so tunnel visioned, over this whole idea that you lose the sense of reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think is really what you're saying there, right? It can even go back to the knowledge thing that, if you got 5 PhDs, you've sort of maybe, we're not bashing anybody that's got 5 PhDs, but I'm saying,
like I said, I'm very impressed.
But when you get so consumed in with whatever it might be, we're just using this as an example, then I have to think, and I think this would bear out if you really did a study on it, that you lose perspective. You lose the proper way to have perspective on life as it runs through and as you live it on every single day. And again, when you lose perspective, the people around you then are affected by that, because how you look at them and what they're doing and how they affect your life and you affect their life, it gets twisted. It gets morphed. And again, all we're doing is trying to say, look, grow in understanding. Yes. Because that will help you grow in wisdom. We're going to get to that. But again, just don't forget the comma.
Right.
Don't forget the but.
I'm being reminded of a great scene in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. It's one of the newer ones. And he ends up with his son, who's older now, on a motorcycle in the library. And he's a professor, right? So they're calling, sort of like, Professor Jones. Like, they start asking him questions. And he says, listen, you guys got to get out of the library and get into the field to learn anything. Right. And it always grabbed my attention. It's like, because you think about like higher level schooling like that. So you got to get in the field. You got to experience it and live it and see it and smell it and touch it and whatever it is.
Yes.
I mean, that was archaeology, but whatever it is,
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, you can't live life from the ivory tower. If you do, then just understand that you get disjointed and disconnected from the realities of life. You just do. And more than anything, it's people. It becomes back to the relationships. We're certainly going to talk about that almost all of this flows directly into our ability to relate better to the person in the mirror, as well as others, from the center all the way on out in your sphere, So good growth. Can we have good growth in knowledge? Yes. Can we have good growth in understanding? Yes. Okay. How about abilities? With the coach, I got the coach sitting across the table from me here.
Absolutely.
And certainly he wants his wrestlers to grow in their ability, without a doubt, but all of us, we want to pursue things that grow our abilities, that we're more successful, that we win, those kinds of things. I mean, there's a sense of satisfaction in all of that. Of course there is, perfecting my golf shot or whatever it might be. Of course. So growth in your ability, again, we'll say is good.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Right.
Yeah.
Again,
the comma is you can overtrain if you're going to go to athletics when you're talking about abilities.
Right.
And then you end up unintentionally, you have an unintended consequence of having that line make a turn down. Is what ends up. You think training all that time helps you to keep it going up, but it doesn't. Brings it down.
Right.
The other way.
Right. And that's an uncontrollable.
Then you get forced into that pause you're talking about instead of intentionally being there.
There's the key. And you were talking about that earlier, man, that, there's a very, very distinct difference between a controlled descent and a free fall.
Right.
And
ask any pilot.
True. So abilities. And here's another part about that. What if you get so enamored with increasing your abilities that lots of other stuff starts to suffer?
Right.
The other people in your life's relationship. Because in order to get better at an ability, what does it take?
Time.
Yeah. You have
time and hard
to
work.
Spend the time.
Yeah.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that. We're not saying there is. But we're saying that you can get sideways with that and you can lose perspective on that as you're pursuing getting better. What are you neglecting now over here? And again, fill in anything you want. It doesn't have to be a sports thing. It literally could be a hobby. It can be anything. It doesn't matter. I mean, is hiking good? I love to hike. We love to hike. We do. I did it today, Right. Of course it is. But do I spend all my time on the trail? Of course not. But can I get sideways with that? And can I be on the trail too much? Yeah. And now I can't make that decision for you, Stu, or anybody that's listening. You can only make it for yourself what's too much or not. But there's a point. I mean, there is a point out there it's too much, whatever that is for you.
Right.
So knowledge, understanding, abilities, those are good. Those are things to grow in. We love it.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
Is another one. You'd mentioned it earlier.
Right.
We talk about wisdom
all the time.
This is, but there's definitely good growth in wisdom. This one probably, in my opinion, could use a little more attention than maybe even some of the others. I think people think of, increasing their knowledge and understanding and their abilities. But when it comes to wisdom, this is why we're doing this podcast,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. This is why we're here.
Encourage everybody to, to keep the growth occurring there.
Right.
But at some point, I didn't mean the but on everybody, but that's the comma, right?
Right, exactly.
At some point, you want to put it into practice.
Yes.
And that's you're just going to have some experiences to be able to put it into practice, whatever that is.
Correct.
Whether it's, with a relationship or, a job you're in, or, you might be hiking, right, and have to make some decisions that call for wisdom. Who knows? So,
no, you
got to put it in practice.
Again, that's that coming down from the ivory tower thing that you can choose to pursue wisdom growth. But we've always said right from the very beginning, as we launched the Wise Guys, that there's no way, in our opinion, that overall wisdom, sustainable, good, solid, trustworthy wisdom can be cultivated, which is the same thing as growing it,
right? Can
be cultivated separate and apart from the wheels, like you're talking about, Stu. That you got to get in the game. You got to get bruised. You got to get battered. You're going to have to just put up with it all because it's all part of the deal, and you don't really come out of it without that experience. It's just got to be part of it. And you can get a little bit, again, you can get a little Pollyanna with this whole kind of thing, thinking that you're gaining wisdom by more knowledge or more understanding or increasing your ability. And again, you can. We're not saying you can't, but take Stu's butt in the whole thing, but just make sure that you don't have the rose-colored glasses on about how you're pursuing it. What's the final outcome? Mm-hmm. Is it really translating into making a difference in the world? I mean, to me, this is just my personal take on it and all that. I don't care. I don't care if I have greater wisdom if it can't benefit you, mm-hmm. and if it can't benefit others. Mm-hmm. I mean, then so what? I don't know. What do I get? A medal? Do I get a T-shirt? I mean, what difference does it make? Right. It's come on. This has got it's. We talk about it all the time. It's the flow through. It's
Right.
always
Yeah.
about the flow through, you know?
Yeah. So that's relationships you're talking about now. And that's important. I mean, obviously
Right.
we're not here alone, and that's on purpose.
Right.
So,
Right.
and so we're here to be in relationship with one another. We believe, and I think most people out there believe that.
Yeah.
So, there's, growth. You can look at growth in the form of a relationship.
Sure. Oh,
right.
yeah.
And it could be, there's two ways to look at it. It could be how many relationships I have, and it could be a relationship, call it let's say spouse, partner, right?
Sure. Yeah.
What's the growth in my relationship with my spouse?
Right.
Or my partner?
Sure.
Right. And can we get to a point where we're satisfied? I'm going to use a different word than content. We've been using that word a lot, but can we just enjoy life right now and be in this moment?
Right.
Be satisfied with our relationship.
Right.
Is that possible?
Well, hello, and again, all the way up and down the spectrum. And here's the really nuanced thing now that we just made a sort of a shift when you start to talk about relationships. Now I've got to factor in your growth, and I need to factor in where you're coming from and how is if you're my partner or my spouse and whatever relationship we have, whatever it might be, I'm pursuing these things of growth and I'm going through, whatever to help get better and do life better. But we're never always in sync with another person. And so, now you have to take into account the other person's expectations and their growth. And I mean, that's the beauty of this whole thing, that to me, there's where wisdom comes in,
Right.
Being able to discern those kinds of things. And here's a great graphic, I think, way to look at it. Look at the up and to the right, not as a straight line, not as this hard and fast upward straight line that just moves from point A to point B that we're trying to pursue. Look at it more as an arc. That this pursuit can be look more like an arc. It's softer. It's more forgiving. It may even have some little leveling off points at some point. It's still up and to the right. It's still growth, but it doesn't come with the harshness. It doesn't come with the inflexibility that sometimes when we get into this up and right mode that we adopt. And, I think just picture that in your mind a little bit. Picture a graph, straight line up and to the right versus same point you start from, and it arcs, up and to the right a little bit more,
Well, I can tell you, I'd rather hike the arc than the straight line up, straight up.
That's for sure.
I don't mind a challenge, but give me the arc.
So again, we've talked about the word contentment, but it's not complacency. It's just contentment, so, we had a couple ideas as we kind of wrap everything up here, in just some wisdom that we thought maybe we would share, with you, Rogers, because we don't have a lock on wisdom by any means, right? Sometimes we get a little bit up and to the right, maybe, and we shouldn't, of course, just like any of us. But here's a quote from the Dalai Lama that I thought it was really cool. And we haven't talked a whole lot about religion, per se, as a component of all of this, but I thought it was really kind of poignant as I read this. So here's what he said. All religions try to benefit people with the same basic message of the need for love and compassion, for justice and honesty. Now, I'm going to stop right there because I'm not done yet, though. Yes. We all are nodding, I'm sure, in the right direction. And here's how he ends it, though. For contentment.
Yeah.
Those are noble pursuits. Love, compassion, justice, honesty. Of course they are. But let's not leave out the contentment. Because the minute you try to pursue those other things without an ability to be content, you're probably going to screw it up in some ways. It's just not going to work well.
It's not going to feel as good to me.
Yeah. And I don't think it sends the same message as well to the other person, because if you have this angst in you and you have this, we're trying to move up, we're trying to, all this kind of stuff, or I'm so focused on this love and compassion that I can't just be, I can't be okay if you're not getting it like I get it, or you don't understand, or whatever it might be. I'm not as soft with you if I'm not content where I'm at. Right. And then we got a quote from Doug Larson. I thought you kind of like that one, right? You were talking about?
Yeah. This is a great quote. Let me read this one. So from Doug Larson, the world is full of people looking for spectacular happiness while they snub contentment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, when I read this, Mac, I was thinking, because that phrase, spectacular happiness, struck me. I was like, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I pursue that, and I'm sure a lot of people out there do. So then I was thinking, as I looked at this quote, which I just saw tonight, because remember you sprung this on me.
Right.
When you reach spectacular happiness, do you allow yourself to feel it and to just enjoy it?
Right.
That's kind of, to me, that's where when he says, while they snub contentment, that would be the contentment. I'm allowing myself to feel it.
Yeah.
To enjoy it.
Yeah.
The spectacular happiness, right?
Right.
Because what's the point of having it if you're not gonna feel it and enjoy it?
Right. And even if you're still on that journey, if you haven't achieved the spectacular happiness yet, can you be content in the journey along the way as well? So yeah, all the above. I mean, it's just, again, don't leave out the contentment. Right?
I love that one.
That's so cool, right? So those are a couple little, and then we're going to have our Mystic Mac Nugget as we end this episode. It is another quote. It's not a Macism this week, right? I kind of deviated from that, but this is a quote from a very successful individual that certainly was up and to the right, Bill Gates, right?
Oh yeah.
And here's what he said: success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Up and to the right. That it's always going to be up and to the right.
Right. That's a good one.
So
that's a good
wake-up call. So enjoyed this, man. Thank you. Golly, some great nuggets, I think, came out of this discussion tonight. Even though I sprung it on you, even though you kind of had to just
sort of. It's a good challenge. These are the kinds of conversations that we encourage you all to be in.
Sure. Yeah.
And try not to be afraid of them, right? I mean, we do this a lot, and we have over the years.
Sure.
And so it's always fun to know, kind of to have the experience for the first time is fun, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you get a fresh perspective, and it's some good back and forth. And I love it. We just do this all, like you said, we do this all the time. So thanks for listening, gang. We certainly appreciate it. We hope you got some good stuff out of it. And, we appreciate you listening. We'll see you next week. All right?
Yep. Take care, everybody.
Okay, all you roguers. It's Mac here. And you may now unbuckle your 4-point harness. If you enjoyed this episode of The Wise Guys, we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. Please share it with your friends and drop Stu and I a note. Subscribing is the fuel that makes it possible to deliver fresh, eclectic wisdom every week. Let us know how you are going rogue, and we'll share some of our favorite off-the-reservation stories on an upcoming episode. And don't forget, spread the wisdom by liking us on all social media platforms, and keep asking the whys. We love having you part of the conversation.
Wow, you made it and can now unbuckle. Thanks for listening to Up and to the Right, where the guys talked about the illusion of perpetual growth. They considered what that imbalance does to us because it can't always be about more. Remember to visit the website at www.gorogue.life for lots of follow-up information. See the show notes for any links to episode content, and join us in the ongoing cafe conversation, where we post some thought-provoking ideas and challenges for your roguish conversations. Oh, and of course, tell everyone you know about us and like, follow, and engage. Be sure to tune in next week when Mac unleashes another unthinkable conversation. That is, if you dare.